Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special edition of Inquirer Live. I am Josh Tolentino, Eagles beat reporter for the Philadelphia Inquirer, and very soon I'll be joined by my co host and fellow beat reporter, a special guest, EJ Smith. Both of us are reporting from Mobile, Alabama, the site of this year's Senior Bowl. EJ has been doing some incredible work. He's actually been here longer than me, almost a week now, doing some hard hitting reporting on all the talent coming out of this year's upcoming draft. After the Eagles finished 9-8 in the regular season under first year coach Nick Sirianni, this team reached the NFC wildcard round where they eventually lost to Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now the attention shifts to the draft as the Eagles continue to churn and recreate the roster to build on the foundation that Nick Sirianni has set. Just before we bring EJ in, I want to set some housekeeping reminders before we get started. At any time during the discussion, we want this to be a very interactive conversation with all of our readers and subscribers and viewers back home. You guys will have the opportunity to submit your questions. You can do so by using the chat function in the comment section at the bottom of this page. And if you're watching on our social media platforms such as YouTube and Twitter and Facebook, please visit inquire.com to submit your questions. Excuse me, that is inquire.com/Senior Bowl Live. All right, it is time. I want to introduce my fellow co host and beat reporter, EJ Smith. Let's bring EJ to the table.
What's up, Josh?
Hey, EJ, how's it going? We decided to match almost again. Almost some midnight green, not quite,
You
but
got you
man, you've
got
been
good
in
taste.
Alabama for quite. Hey, like just like last time with our peacoats up at NovaCare Complex for our game day central viewers. But EJ, you've
Yeah.
been in Alabama quite some time now. How's your week been? It's almost been a full week for you.
Yeah, well, first off, thanks for having me. You gave me a lot of titles there, but I think my favorite one was special guest. Very very special. My mom always told me I was special, so I'll take that. Yeah, I've been here since Friday. I got in early for the HBCU Combine, the first ever. We'll talk about that later in the show, I'm sure. But yeah, a couple people have been joking with me that I'm an Alabama resident now, which is not something that I thought I would call myself. But hey, I guess I got to wear it until I'm out of here, right?
Yeah, again, we're reporting live just a few blocks away from where all the action has been at this year's Senior Bowl. EJ and I are at our hotels here in Mobile, Alabama. But EJ, man, so much to discuss about this Eagles team. Even after the season ended, that they made the playoffs. Their run was abruptly halted by Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in that wild card round. But the news never really stops with this team. This team has three first round picks. General Manager Howie Roseman and Coach Nick Sirianni are on the ground here at Mobile, Alabama, scouting the talent at this year's Senior Bowl, along with a lot of other personnel who you've been able to spend some time with throughout the week. But EJ, let's first discuss some breaking news with this Eagles team. Starting quarterback Jalen Hurts. What is the latest regarding Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, so it came out. It was reported by Tom Pelissero from NFL Network that Jalen Hurts had surgery on his left ankle today. I don't know when the surgery was scheduled, but it's getting late in the day, so it's probably safe to assume he's had it. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the season, he said that he was hopeful he wouldn't have to have surgery. I don't think that that's like necessarily an indication that it was like a serious thing or like that this is a worst case scenario. I mean, most people don't want to have surgery. But yeah, he said he was hoping that he wouldn't have to. But usually when a guy says "I hope I don't have to," it's a sign that he probably needs to have surgery on something. So I think it's noteworthy to mention that he had tightrope surgery on the other ankle in 2018. Um, I'm not a doctor. I cannot explain to you the finer details of what a tightrope surgery is, but I have a general idea, and it usually comes when you have a lot of high ankle sprains to the same ankle. Lane Johnson had one, I think it was 2 years ago. So yeah, I don't think that this is an injury that will keep him out a significant amount of time. I think he'll probably be ready for spring workouts. But yeah, I mean it's still obviously very noteworthy that he had to have the surgery. So.
Of course, and when we analyze how Jalen Hurts performed in the last month of the season, including that playoff game against the Buccaneers. Again, you are noteworthy. I think that's a great thing that we can circle around is that Jalen was definitely trying out there. He got that 2 week break. The game where Gardner Minshew was inserted for him. He got that start. They had that win up in New Jersey, and then they had the bye week, and then Jalen Hurts came back. But in those last 3 games, EJ, including the playoffs, he just didn't look right. At least to me. I mean, there were times, instances we'd see like when he'd scramble out of the pocket, maybe he'd be more hesitant. If he wasn't necessarily hesitant, he wouldn't execute the same types of jukes that we saw earlier in the season. One that is vividly stuck in my memory, and I'm sure yours too, is when he juked out that Saints defender at Lincoln Financial Field that turned into like a living meme. He never did that over the last month of the regular season, and noticeably, EJ, as I was typing my story today, zero rushing touchdowns for Jalen Hurts in the last 3 games after setting a franchise record, 10 of them in those first, I believe, 15 games. So clearly affected him. He wasn't able to, again, be as effective in the red zone, not only the red zone, but just utilizing his legs. And then that showed his deficiencies in the passing game, which has been a big topic of discussion as we hit in the offseason. But before we wrap up this discussion on Jalen Hurts and transition to the Senior Bowl, which is where we're reporting live from in Mobile, Alabama, just closing the book on this Jalen Hurts injury, his latest injury. Again, EJ mentioned all the details of his surgery on his left ankle. The big thing is that EJ and I, along with our colleague Jeff McClain, who is also here at this year's Senior Bowl, we've been told that Jalen Hurts is expected, if he does make that full recovery, the timeline around when he would be back is before those summer months, which would allow him to participate in the offseason training program. And EJ, I think for a young player like Jalen Hurts, heading into his second year as the starter, which Howie Roseman continues to claim he will a role that he will retain. I think that's important, those offseason reps, just officially with the team. But we know Jalen Hurts likes to arrange, some sessions on the side with his receivers, whether it be with Quezkins, Devontae Smith, etc. And I think
Yeah,
there's
and I
importance with that.
yeah, and I think that a thing with Jalen is that he actually has been in a lot of different systems in the last like 5 or 6 years. I mean,
Yep.
he was at Alabama, and then they had an offensive coordinator change there, transfers to Oklahoma, gets to the Eagles under Doug Peterson, and then his second season he has to learn Nick Sirianni's offense. And we talked to him at the end of the season, and we asked him like, what areas do you need to improve on? And what areas, do you think you'll improve on? And he really did. He said that it was going to be important for him to have a second year in an offensive system. Um, and that's real. Like a lot of guys, make jumps the second year that they're in a system because it's like, okay, I'm finally starting to get it. And I think that, you know, not having that for such a long period of time, I think is definitely a detriment to some. I think it's a detriment. I think it helps explain some of the things that Jalen struggles with. I think that you're absolutely right. Getting reps in the scheme all off season, stuff that he knows, he gets to rep it more, see it against different looks. It's just going to be a much higher level of comfortability running Nick Sirianni's offense the second year. So yeah, I definitely think that if he's back by spring work, then it'll be important for him.
Of course. And lastly, again, before we transition the conversation to the Senior Bowl, also noteworthy to mention linebacker Sean Bradley had surgery today, successful surgery on a neck injury. His timeline is actually a little bit longer than Jalen Hurts. He'll be out of football action until about August, which is when training camp starts up. So, two very notable surgeries today for quarterback Jalen Hurts and linebacker Sean Bradley. He went to Temple, right, EJ? You guys share that
Yeah,
alumnus?
a fellow Owl. Yeah, I didn't cover him though. But yeah,
Okay,
Temple guy.
okay, Temple guy, and he was second in the NFL in special teams tackle, so a significant contributor for the team. All right, EJ. Breaking news. We've discussed that. We've talked about the impact of those injuries. We're here at the Senior Bowl at Alabama. I believe it was. It's your first Senior Bowl, correct?
It's my first Senior Bowl. The weather has
Okay.
been very terrible. I will admit. It is raining sideways today, like the Forrest Gump line. It even rained sideways. I guess he got that. He didn't get that in Alabama, but he might as well have. It has been a true football guy day for me. I've been out in the driving rain and the wind, watching prospects, trying to take notes. My pen's running down my notebook. So it's a real service for our viewers here that that I was glad to give. I'll just say that.
No, no, it definitely has been pouring all day today. Yesterday was a little dry, ended up raining towards the tail end of practice, but from what I believe, tomorrow's practice has actually officially been moved indoors. So just a glance of how the week has gone, at least on the field. But EJ, let's give a brief overview for our viewers who aren't necessarily familiar with the Senior Bowl, just to get them more tuned in to what this event is, because it is a very large attended event. The director of the event told us at the beginning of Senior Bowl week that there were nearly 1,000 attendees between media, scouts, general managers, front office executives. So a very significant event in the NFL calendar year. But basically, for our viewers back home who are tuned in, the Senior Bowl is a week-long event. They've got 3 practices, and it features the best senior talent from the incoming draft class. It's really an excellent opportunity for guys like Howie Roseman. Julian Lurie, actually, son of owner Jeff Lurie, is also here with the team, along with Nick Sirianni, their coach. And many more executives and coaches are here to scout these prospects, and just some relevance for this year's uh, roster of the Eagles, or this past year's roster. Excuse me. Past attendees include Jalen Hurts, Dallas Goddard, I believe, EJ, and last year's headliner was Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith was part of this year's Senior Bowl. So, all in all, it's a very important event. Not just that, I mean, all these teams are here, all these scouts are here. A lot of networking happens, not just with us, but with obviously the scouts, the prospects, and then the teams themselves. They stay at the same hotels. They see each other in the lobbies. It's a very big event uh, for the NFL calendar. So, EJ, did you want to address the biggest question first, or do you want to recap a little bit, just more so about your Senior Bowl experience?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely kind of piggybacking off what you said. The Eagles place a lot of value in this. Even dating back to like Carson Wentz, they got. I mean, they obviously
Hmm.
evaluated him from here. Mid-round guys like I think Isaac Seumalo was here.
And Jeff Stoutland is also here, correct? Their
Yep.
offensive
Yeah,
line
he's on the
coach.
field looking at the guys. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just it is very much something that they value. I think the Eagles VP of player personnel, Andy Weidel, really values this game. So I mean, if you're an Eagles fan, like paying attention to these guys is important because honestly, like there's a really high probability that somebody at this game will be on the Eagles, in a few months. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of value there. And then yeah, I mean it's been a good week. I mean, jokes aside about the weather, like it's been nice to just kind of watch football, just sit around and watch football all day. It's an 11 o'clock to about 4 o'clock experience. You watch the American team and then the national team, and you just get to watch them practice. You get to watch these guys have reps against elevated competition. A lot of these guys are going against other seniors, NFL draft prospects. Um, so yeah, there's been a lot of informative uh, reps. I would call it. Things that have just been, I guess, just we're getting more pieces to the puzzle. The expression is the draft starts at Mobile, and like it really kind of does.
Hmm.
Like I mean, this is the first time we really get a good look at these guys.
Of course, and there are other bowl games such as the Polynesian Bowl, the inaugural HBCU Legacy Bowl next month, and even the Shrine Bowl, which is another college all-star game. But this is I believe, a very long-standing one, and not just that. I think it's had the most impact on the teams across the league. Again, we mentioned the names at the top: Jalen Hurts, Dallas Goddard, Devontae Smith. They've all participated in this Senior Bowl, and obviously had the impact, like what you mentioned, on the Eagles front office to go ahead and select them in a few months. EJ, draft time. I know we at 2-5, when the Eagles were 2-5 after the Vegas game, we were looking at the draft board, thinking of where the projections were going to be. We thought they might have a top 10 pick, but you know what, EJ? They still have 3 picks, and that is very significant and rare for a playoff team that just made the playoffs. What are their picks, EJ? They're in that middle part of that first round, but I still think that those are very significant picks to have, and Howie Roseman can really almost do whatever he wants. I know they're not necessarily in the top 10, but a lot of things for him to figure out over these next 2 months.
Yeah, they have 15, which is the Dolphins pick. They have 16, which is the Colts pick, and they have
Hmm.
19, which is their own pick. I'm really proud of myself for knowing that off the top of my head. I got to be honest. Um, so yeah, they got 3 first rounders, and you're right. I mean, there was a point in the season where it looked like, man, that Miami pick might be a top 5 pick. That Colts pick was top 10 for a while. The Eagles were in the top 10 too. People started looking at like Aiden Hutchinson, Kayvon Thibodeau, Kyle Hamilton, like top 5 guys and really exciting players. But, they kind of settled into that 15, 16, 19 range. There's like the late teens. Sorry, I got an Amber Alert.
Oh, we did silence our phones.
Amber
Those are the
Alerts get through for
notifications
everything.
that go through. Yeah,
But you
and
can
the
turn those
weather
off.
alerts as well.
Oh, it was a weather alert? Okay, I was about to say, I was about to like give us some credit for not turning the
That's not
Amber Alerts off.
that's some perspective just of the weather out here. I've got my window open and it's just all gray here in
Yeah.
Mobile, Alabama, as you were discussing. It was raining
So I wasn't
sideways
being
earlier.
a baby about the rain. It was real. Okay, now we know. So, but yeah, the Eagles they kind of settled into the late teens for the picks. And I know that like again, some of the exciting names are at the top of the draft, but I think the consensus is that like this class is not really like loaded at the top so much as it is. There's like maybe 20 guys, 25 guys that have first round grades. Not every year you're going to have 32 guys with first round grades. And I think the Eagles will get 3 guys with first round grades where they are. And I think that, what's important is that they have to hit on them. That's going to be the key. So yeah.
Yeah, certainly. Especially after, not necessarily last year's draft, because I wrote my draft report card from this past year's draft class, and I thought Howie Roseman recovered, from previous poor drafts in recent years, and obviously I think the Devontae Smith pick was a hit. Guys like Kenneth Gainwell in the 5th round, Landon Dickerson, who I think will have a long future in the NFL if he continues to develop and blossom. There's a flower reference with under Jeff Stoutland. Last year's draft was a good draft class, EJ, and Howie Roseman wants to continue to build on that, especially after this team surprisingly, at least in my mind, made the playoffs. That surprised a lot of people around the league, considering that they were picked to finish last by a lot of people in the NFC East. All right, EJ, we mentioned the picks 15, 16, 19. Uh, I think any year, it doesn't matter the quarterback situation. I mean, you saw in Green Bay when they had Aaron Rodgers and they got Jordan Love. Um, the quarterback is always going to be a relevant position, no matter what team you are. And certainly, quarterback is a talking point in Philadelphia with Jalen Hurts, considering again he had that hobbled. He was hobbled by that left ankle injury late in the season. It showed in the playoff loss to the Buccaneers, and we've seen his passing woes. We've also seen him mature. But again, quarterback is always going to be a talking point in this league. That being said, EJ, I wouldn't say this year's talent in not only the upcoming NFL draft, when you consider the underclassmen, but in regards to the Senior Bowl, it's is underwhelming a good word? I mean, there might be one or two guys who might be, hey, that's the guy in this class. But initially looking at the list, and we'll see how they continue to rise or fall over these next 2-3 months leading up to the draft. Let's discuss some quarterbacks here. And do you imagine the Eagles sniffing around the quarterback position? Do they interest it? Especially when it comes to those 3 first round picks.
Yeah, I think underwhelming is a fair word with the
Hmm.
one caveat that like we're early in this process. We've been here before where it's like, oh man, this isn't a good year to have a first round this isn't a
Yeah.
good year for first round quarterbacks. These guys are all second rounders, and then 2 months from now, it's like, oh, do you think that Malik Willis is going to go 2? You think
They
he's going to go 3?
skyrocket.
Yeah, I mean, their stock rises. Teams get desperate. They get excited. But I think what you said is fair. I think that there's 2 guys here and 3 guys in the class that I think could be like top half of the draft guys. Number one is Kenny Pickett, who's here.
Mhm.
Um, I think he's been the best quarterback in the
Who
last two
grew up an
days.
Eagles fan, by the way.
Grew up an Eagles fan. He's from Jersey. He committed to Temple and decommitted. I'm
Mhm.
kind of giving myself away here. Maybe if you're watching this, just go to the Inquirer tomorrow. That's all I'll say. If you're interested in what we're talking about now. So yeah, I think that Kenny Pickett's been the best quarterback at the Senior Bowl. He doesn't really have like elite like traits. Like if you're watching Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, if you're watching even like Joe Burrow, like the processing that Joe Burrow has is elite at the very least. He might not be the most athletically gifted guy, but he's really good in a lot of areas and he's great at processing stuff. If you're watching like Aaron Rodgers, even like if you're watching some of the superheroes in the NFL, then Kenny Pickett's not really going to be like your guy. Like the ball doesn't jump out of his hand. He doesn't have great athleticism. Like he's an athlete. He's athletic, but he's not like blazing fast. Um, but he's a good quarterback. He's accurate, makes good decisions with the ball. He's played in bad weather. He's played a lot, and he's played a lot of games. He's good, reading defenses and everything else. So he's been in a pro style offense too. It's an easy transition, and you kind of see that at the Senior Bowl. It seems like he's comfortable. Again, he's an accurate passer. So yeah, I think he's probably at the top of the list for quarterbacks right now. If I had to guess, like Malik Willis, I could see a team talking themselves into him. Everything I just said about Kenny Pickett, let's honestly like reverse it. Like the ball pops out of Malik Willis's hands. I mean, it's been one of my favorite things about being here is watching him and Carson Strong throw the football. Now Carson Strong's a different story. Like Malik, movement skills really good. Like I think he'll run a 40 time around what Jalen ran. Jalen ran 4.59. I could see him running 4.56, 4.55, maybe low 4.5s if he's really good. So I don't know if
And
you're
he's a
looking
polished
for.
talker, EJ. We had
He's
to wake
funny.
up.
Yeah.
We had to wake up this morning. I think around like 6 a.m. to make a
Don't
7
remind
a.m.
me.
breakfast with these players over at the convention center here in Mobile. And Malik's session was quite entertaining, and he made sure to engage with, it seemed like, whoever he was speaking to. So
Yeah,
a
he's
lot
he's
of praise for
charismatic
Malik.
guy for sure. But yeah, I mean, just I think that if you're a fan of elite traits, then he's your guy. He needs a lot of development. I think I saw someone tweet. I don't remember who it is. I apologize, but I saw someone tweet that the best way to sum it up with Malik Willis is he's got the 5 best throws of the day, and he's also got the 5 worst. I think consistency is going to be the thing with him. I mean, the ball hits the ground a lot even on routes on air. But man, like this guy can throw 70 yards down the field. He can throw with velocity. I mean, even in the hard rain today, he was driving the ball everywhere he needed to. Sometimes it's not the most accurate, but he's definitely got a special athleticism, special physical tools. I think he's going to be a guy in a year or two that we'll find out if he can take the steps that he needs to take to be a consistent starter in the league.
Of course, you mentioned three with Carson Strong, three big names, quarterback names who are here in attendance. Sam Howell is another guy out of
Yeah,
North
it's good.
Carolina.
It's a deep
Yeah,
class for sure. Yeah, it's
it,
just kind of like when
it
you
is.
have
It's just
5,
one. You
you
want to
don't
identify
have.
that one. Yep.
Yeah, it's when you have a lot of guys that are in contention. It's like that usually tells you what you need to know about the class. So
Of course, and in relation to the Eagles, I don't really see any of those guys overstepping and taking over what Jalen Hurts has built with this team. As we know, you can't rule anything out in the NFL, especially with Howie Roseman, who had committed to Carson Wentz heading into last offseason. What was the line again, EJ, with the fingers? And
he said
I
that
think you wrote about
players
this.
like
Yeah.
Carson Wentz are like fingers on your hand. You can't imagine life without them, or something like that. And I mean, he said this year like it was basically like a line he probably uses on his kids, and he could have just said they're like my kids. But yeah, I think he wants that one back. I think that and quarterback factory are the two things that I think he probably wants back.
Yeah, and then in relation to that, heading into this offseason, when we spoke with Howie and Nick, at the end of the season during their exit interviews, they committed both of them committed to Jalen Hurts as the starter, probably knowing there was a good chance that he was going to there was a chance he was going to have off-season surgery, even back then. So even at that point, they committed. But again, you can't rule anything out in the National Football League. But my best guess is that and then again, you have to consider the trade market, and that's a whole nother topic of conversation. We're here talking about the draft and this year's prospects, but as of now, Howie Roseman, Nick Sirianni, they have committed to Jalen Hurts, and they've made that known. They told that to him in his last meeting with them at the team facility. All right, EJ, we talked about the quarterback class. You've got to do that every year. It's like it's almost like a holiday. Everyone
They were
wants to
over
know.
there. They were
Yep,
watching them throw at the beginning of the first day on Monday. I mean, or what was it? Was it Monday or it was Tuesday? They were over there watching them throw. I mean, they
that's
can't help
actually, yeah, that's
themselves,
where we
right?
noticed them at first. Correct.
Yeah, and like, listen, I know, like, I'm kind of saying that in jest. Like, they're going to do their homework on these guys. If
Hmm.
they think that one of these guys is going to be the next Pat Mahomes or Tom Brady or whatever else, then yeah, of course they would draft them. I think anybody would sign up for that.
And
Um,
sorry to interrupt, EJ, but Howie
that's all good.
Roseman, he also traveled to go see Kenny Pickett at a game during the college season. So
Yeah.
another noteworthy point when it comes to this year's class at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to do their due diligence. Like, I mean, it's like, it sounds like GM speak when they say, oh, we're going to evaluate everything. We're going to, leave all our options open. But it's true. I mean, again, if they think that one of these guys is going to step in right away and be like a top 10 quarterback, I'm not saying that that's going to happen. But if they believe that, then of course they would go after a guy like that. So I think they're going to do their due diligence. I mean, again, it's noteworthy, but it's also like this is the Eagles we're talking about. This is Howie Roseman. Like they value quarterbacks higher than just about anybody. So of course they're going to do their due diligence. So it's like it's something you should know. It's like something important, but it's also like I don't want people to think that we're overreacting or that they should overreact. I think I've said a couple times on the show like no need to panic. So I think that that's kind of where I'm at right now with this.
Certainly, and we'll just address one question that came in our chat function recently. Again, if you have any questions, you can go to inquire.com/Senior Bowl Live. This is from James Goldman. He says these guys, in reference to the quarterbacks that we're speaking about, he thinks they're middle to late round picks in truth, or priority signees right after the draft. I would disagree with that point. He's
Is
asking
he
if we
saying the
agree.
quarterbacks or is he saying Senior
Yes,
Bowl?
he's mentioning specifically, I think, to the quarterback. So
Okay.
I disagree. There are obviously always going to be quarterback needy teams in the league. It seems like every year there's about a handful of them, maybe five. There's definitely more than five this year. So um, outside of relation to the Eagles, the NFL teams are interested in these guys. Sam Howell's a guy who, personally, I didn't think he lit it up, throughout his college career, but he shows the traits of a valuable quarterback who gives it his all, and that's what I've heard from scouts and front office personnel when I discuss Sam Howell with them. Is that he's a good backup, and you need a viable backup in this league. We'll find out soon what these guys' ceilings are. EJ used the stock reference earlier in regards to how draft status goes leading up to the draft over these next 2-3 months. But again, valuable guys. Not necessarily someone I think on that list that the Eagles should take. But EJ, let's discuss that. What should they do with these picks? They've got 15, 16, and 19, three first-round picks. That's very rare to have. You look at the Rams, who are heading to the Super Bowl. I don't think they have a first-round pick for several years.
They just trade
And
them all away. Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, listen, hey, it worked. They're in the Super Bowl, but yeah, they don't care about picks.
yeah, definitely. Yep.
Could
But
you
there's
imagine
still
being a scout on the Rams? Like that's got to be the worst job ever. You're
they're
like,
probably at high schools or something at this
yeah,
point.
like you're like, oh, the Kayvon Thibodeau tape, can't watch it. Aiden Hutchinson didn't even bother. Like they're just sitting around watching, like they're probably watching like Mountain West games or something, trying to find like seventh round sleepers. No offense to the
Yeah,
Mountain West Conference. I'm sorry.
no doubt. It reminds me of a question I had for Bruce Arians before the NFC wildcard game. I asked him, and Bruce Arians, he respects a lot of guys in the NFL, but rarely does he ever really hype guys up, especially before a upcoming matchup. But I asked him about Devontae Smith, because Devontae Smith did train in Tampa, just across the street from Raymond James Stadium down there during his pre-draft process. Now he's the Eagles' number one wide receiver, broke Deshaun Jackson's rookie receiving record. But I asked him before the wild card game, Bruce, did you ever drive just down the street to watch Devontae work out, whether it be on the field or visit him in the gym? And he did just what you did, EJ. He laughed and he was like, "There's no point," because they had a low 20s pick, and so just a kind of a similar joke to you there
Yeah, it's
with
what
the
Mike Tomlin
Rams.
said to Chase Claypool. He said, "I hope I never suck so bad that I get a guy like you." Like these teams, man, they know they don't want to watch. They know that it's like probably like, oh man, I don't even want to watch this guy. He's gonna be a top 5 pick. I'll never get my hands on him. So
All right. Well, the Eagles will get their hands, pending if they keep all three picks. In my personal opinion, and this will be something that we continue to report and write about leading up to the draft. Howie Roseman, he also has the option to trade these picks or trade an assortment of these picks in a package to build more first round picks in future years. We've seen that done all throughout the league. Teams love to teams not named the Rams love to stockpile picks and future draft assets. But in regards to this upcoming April draft, again, three picks. We've got to reiterate it every time we talk about this team because that is a very important discussion point when it comes to the Eagles. 15, 16, and 19. EJ, if I had to ask you or identify areas of need, position groups, where they need help, give me your top three when it comes to improving this roster.
yeah, I would say number one is edge rusher. And that's a no-brainer. I mean, that is a position that they value higher than I mean, higher than most teams. Like they know the value of an edge rusher. And it's kind of surprising that it's gotten to this point where they don't really have. Josh Sweat's a really nice player. I mean, I think he's an above average starter. He's a double digit sack guy. That's really valuable. But I
Best year
mean,
of his career.
yeah, and he's just getting better every year. He's getting more playing time and he's playing better and better. But I still think that when the Eagles were a perennial playoff team, when they were when they won the Super Bowl, they not only had like high end talent at defensive end and as far as their starters, but they were deep. They had 5 or 6 guys that they could rotate. They could keep guys fresh. I mean, that's how Josh Sweat got his start. He was 30% of snaps, designated pass rusher in a really good pass rushing rotation. On the Super Bowl team, it was Brandon Graham and Derek Barnett, and then Josh Sweat and Chris Long, and Michael Bennett was out there every once in a while, and the Eagles really value that position, and they need it's a legitimate need. I mean, Derek Barnett's entering free agency. Um,
Brian
Brandon Graham is
Kerrigan also
coming.
entering
Yeah,
free agency.
Brandon Graham is coming off of a ruptured Achilles. He should be back probably around the start of next season. I would say. I know he's hopeful for that. So they're really. I mean, they're not deep at that position. They don't have the high end talent. I think it's a no brainer. Like I would be very surprised if they don't get out of the first round without at least one edge rusher. I don't think they would draft two, but like honestly, I would say like it's more likely that they get two guys who are categorized as defensive ends. Like maybe one's like a true edge, like a stand-up edge, and then one's like kind of like Logan Hall, who we can talk about later in the show. Like a guy who can move around, play the edge, play the 5 tech, maybe even slide into a 3 tech on like pass rushing situation. Sorry if that's too like football nerdy for you. Um,
Basically, EJ is saying they can move across the defensive
Yeah,
line
play
there,
defensive
switch up their
tackle.
where they're
Yeah,
where they're
play
attacking the
defensive end.
gaps.
Yeah, but basically, I mean, edge rusher is definitely the number one need. Beyond that, I think it kind of gets a little bit closer.
Mhm.
I would say, again, knowing how the Eagles think, I would say that probably interior offensive line might be their second need. I know fans are not going to like that. They're going to want me to say linebacker. They're going to want me to say receiver. Listen, the Eagles value the offensive line. That's always how it's been. And a dominant offensive line has been synonymous with this team since I was a kid. Like, I'm dead serious about that. Like,
EJ, I
this
had my
is
doubts at the beginning of the season when Brandon Brooks went down. Sayamalu. I mean, it
Jeff
just seemed
Stoutland,
like
man.
yep, almost every week that they were rotating pieces in there. Even Landon Dickerson, I feel like he was not necessarily injured the entire year, but always had some type of hobble, or maybe that's just like how he enjoys walking in
He
front of
does
us.
walk
But he was
funny.
a football guy, and it seemed like
Yeah.
again this offensive line, it didn't matter who was out there, but they were performing.
Yeah, no, but so I really do. I mean, Brandon Brooks retiring. We don't know about Jason Kelsey yet. I
Who
think
backed
that
out of the Pro Bowl?
yeah,
By
probably
by the
he's
way,
probably just
yeah.
banged up. I don't
Hmm.
I don't want to sound the alarm on that. That's like my motto. It's not to panic. Don't overreact. So
We
yeah,
ran
I
into
think
Nick Sirianni during
yeah.
practice the other day, EJ, and he
Mhm.
brought up that joke of him sending some kegs of
Sending them the
beer.
kegs. Yeah.
Yeah, but I feel like that's there's when you gauge the temperature of that situation, I think it's a positive feeling right now.
Yeah. I don't get
Obviously he's
any
got to
sense of worry from
give him
him.
his
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. I don't think even he knows yet. So, but I think even if he comes back, Brandon Brooks. I mean, retiring. You could put Landon Dickerson at one of the guard spots, put Isaac Sayamalo at another one, but I do think that addressing that early would make a lot of sense. And then beyond that, I think you could argue cornerback or linebacker. I think both of those are major needs. I mean safety even. I mean, if I had to guess, if I had to pick one, I probably would pick linebacker. I just think the way that the Eagles defense, the way that I mean, we'll see about Jonathan Gannon. There's so much to talk about, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, Jonathan
Um,
Gannon. He was
yeah,
actually here in Mobile, by the way.
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, we'll see what happens with Jonathan Gannon if he gets a head coaching job. But even if he doesn't, even if he does, even if the Eagles are finding a new defensive coordinator, I think the days are gone where like they can just completely undervalue their linebackers, especially if Gannon stays. I mean, Gannon's scheme puts a lot of stress on the linebackers just because the safeties are so deep. They're playing off coverage. Linebackers have to cover a lot of space. He needs good athletes at those spots. I think TJ Edwards is a good starter, but I think putting a guy a name that's not here, Devin Lloyd, athletic linebacker who can cover a lot of space. Um, I think putting a guy in that spot next to TJ Edwards would really kind of complement TJ Edwards, and it would probably help the Eagles defense out a lot. So yeah, I would say probably I would go edge rusher, linebacker, interior offensive line as my three.
EJ, I'm going to use this as a quick plug to your stories. If you guys back home have noticed, it doesn't matter what position group we're talking about. It seems like EJ always has a name that the Eagles might be able to explore. That's because he's been covering the draft really all throughout the season, even when as the Eagles were battling for a playoff spot. He has been expertly covering the draft and this year's prospects. Now we're here at the Senior Bowl, checking out some of the top senior prospects, but EJ's done a terrific job. You can find his author page at Inquirer.com. EJ, all right, I'm going to go with my three, and don't get upset at me because I think we're going to overlap here. I think edge rusher is for sure a top need. I think it's the top need. We look at who's leaving. Derek Barnett seems to be on his way out. 7 penalties this year just continued to add to the frustration of the team. More negatives than positives when it came to his performance this year. Nick Sirianni, we think about that Cowboys game earlier in the season. That's
Yeah.
something he's gonna have to stick with his entire coaching career. EJ, it doesn't matter if he sticks with the Eagles in 5 years, if he's with another team. Uh, what was that? I think the second or third game of his career, he was caught on the
Third
TV
game.
broadcast saying it's
It's always
always
him.
him in
Yeah.
reference to Derek Barnett. So, Derek Barnett has had some memories with the team. You talk about the pressure and the edge rush. Brandon Graham forcing that strip sack on Tom Brady in the Super Bowl. Derek Barnett was the one who pounced on that football. So some moments here for Derek Barnett, but it seems that he might be on his way out. We mentioned Ryan Kerrigan, who had just 3 tackles in the regular season, over 300 defensive snaps. I think that was a big whiff last year in free agency. And then you mentioned Brandon Graham. So coming back from that Achilles injury, I think edge rusher by far. Uh, maybe linebacker, and I kind of alluded or hinted at what my next position group will be. Linebacker, and then the third was kind of a toss up. I know you mentioned the offensive line, but I also kind of like some of the pieces that they have there, the depth pieces they
Sure.
have there. But you can never have, as we've learned, enough offensive linemen. So my third man, I do think wide receiver is a need, but I don't
Sure.
necessarily think that they should address that with another young player. I think they need to maybe add a name in free agency to help out. Not necessarily help out. I think Devontae Smith is very talented, but just to add a more sure pass catcher to that group. But third, I think I'm gonna go cornerback or safety, someone opposite of Slay or someone back there at safety because Rodney McLeod, a vocal team leader, I believe he turns 32.
32.
Uh,
Yeah.
yep, this upcoming season, and then Anthony Harris, who's a little bit younger, former teammates at the University of Virginia, but both of them have expiring deals. We'll see what happens with both of them. It's hard imagining that they bring both of them back. We'll see the
Yeah.
cap situation as the next few weeks develop, and also their market value when it comes to the other safeties available in free agency. But safety is a position where it's like if you lock on to a young guy and you can develop that player within the span of 2-3 years. I mean, we've seen a lot of rising safeties earn those multi or second contracts. And one guy that I've been paying attention to is and I'm sorry if I fumble his name, but I watched him in a drill the other day, and he was so explosive. And I'm talking about he's out from Baylor. Jalen Petrie, I think was is how you
Hmm.
pronounce his last name. A little bit under the 6 foot side. I think he might be 5'11", 6 foot. You know, a lot of people debate if your safety should be taller. But man, he was so explosive in his drills. Comparable, I guess, for me is that when I watch Devontae Smith in practice every single day, EJ, you and I are at practice every single day during the season. We watch them do the same drills. We watch them go to the same parts of the field every single day.
Yeah.
It's like repetition with these guys, and that's really what it is. But after you see guys do hundreds and hundreds of times throughout the week, throughout the months, throughout the year, you notice who puts in the effort. And Devontae Smith is definitely one of those guys. Jalen Petrie from Baylor, he was doing that all throughout the Senior Bowl practices over these next 2 weeks. I think he's someone to watch in the Senior Bowl game, which is actually going to be played on Saturday. So I'm going to go edge rusher, linebacker, then safety. I think we're somewhat on the same page there,
Yeah.
EJ. It's kind of like our predictions that we go through throughout the year.
Yeah. Absolutely.
If you want to, we're already 40 minutes in. We had talked about going 45 minutes. We've got some time for some questions, EJ. If you're up for the
Oh,
challenge of answering,
absolutely.
you know our reader questions. We love interacting with them.
Yeah. I get long winded when I talk about the draft. I get excited.
No doubt. All right, we'll go to the chat, and I'll just read these to you, and I guess we can go back and forth really quick. We've got them
Sure.
coming in here.
Do like
Uh,
rapid fire, I guess.
Yes, no doubt. And well, actually, this something we kind of just talked about, but don't you think the Eagles need a dominant linebacker? I can go a little somewhat both ways on this because I do like TJ Edwards. But this reader is saying, don't you think the Eagles need a dominant linebacker? It's been years since they had a dominant linebacker such as Trotter, Kendricks, etc. The team has a long history of linebackers, and he goes on to say several more names. Uh, that's a great point in regards to retainment and someone who can be the linebacker for I almost said generations, but several years.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, but I do think they have some pieces there, EJ. Obviously, it's a area of improvement. We both had that on our list of top three needs. But I do think, again, TJ Edwards, solid piece to build around. We saw what he did with more playing time. And I also think that he improved in pass coverage, which was one of the questions coming into the year. And then a guy like Davion Taylor, who suffered an injury, and he ended up missing a large part of the end of the season. But as his playing time increased, and they got rid of Eric Wilson earlier in the year, another whiff in last year's free agency. I think those are two solid pieces to build around. But talk about upgrades. Alex Singleton. Is he necessarily a piece? I know he was a team captain and a significant and veteran leadership, but when it comes to achieving what Jonathan Gannon wants with this defense and the scheme that Nick Sirianni wants to employ on defense, you mentioned this, and I'm going to bring it right back up because it's so important to talk about when it comes to improving the linebackers. It didn't seem at times that they had the personnel to match, or not necessarily that, but that they were so much stress on that position throughout the year. It seemed like, whenever they faced Tom Brady, the two times he was throwing a lot of the linebackers.
Yeah, I think that the league is just changing, a little bit. Like, I think 5 years ago it was easier to get away with having, not great linebackers, and I think you watch the championship weekend, like guys like Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, uh, Zach Taylor, they're all kind of similar in the way that they like to attack linebackers. They like to basically make linebackers wrong, put them in conflict positions where they have to make a decision. And the only way you overcome that is like having guys with great instincts, guys who are really smart and fast, cover a lot of space. Um, so like, do they need a dominant linebacker? I think they need a dominant edge rusher. I think they need a dominant corner, a dominant safety. Sure, having talent at any position is good. It's funny. I remember earlier you asked me like, what should the Eagles do with their picks? I think they should draft some good players with those picks. Outside the box thinking right here. So I don't know if I could pick one position for them to nail. That I think would make the biggest difference. I think it's edge rusher. I think after that, I probably would say corner, and after that, like there's different ways to skin the cat. If you want a linebacker because you need a guy who can cover a lot of space in the run game and cover tight ends, like you can get a safety to do that kind of stuff too if you really want. So um, I do think it's a need. I obviously, like I said, I could see them putting it off until the second or third round, especially like you mentioned. I think TJ Edwards is a starter. I think that Davion Taylor was showing some good things. I think the fact that he hasn't played that much is really a detriment because he needs that experience and he's going to have some growing pains. And it's a matter of if the Eagles can be patient enough with him to kind of let him learn on the fly like they were doing last year. I think Alex Singleton's a solid player. I think if he's your third linebacker, your linebacking core is okay. If he's your fourth linebacker, you're probably in good shape. I think in a base defense against the run, Alex Singleton has a ton of tackles. He's an effort guy. I think he's a good player to have on your team. I think the Eagles probably just play him too much. So again, I said I wouldn't go long-winded. So let me just say that I don't think that they need a dominant linebacker to have the defense that they hope, but I definitely I think that if they had a guy who covered a lot of space and could cover tight ends and was really really good in coverage, then I think I mean their defense would be a lot better. So
All right, EJ. It seems like we're on board with their biggest need. There are several areas of need. I think all throughout the year that we've said, as it came uh, to surface that the Eagles were going to have these three picks. At first it was like, is Carson Wentz going to hit his snap count? As that got closer, I think you and I talked every week about, Jonathan Gannon needing to get the personnel. Here's the opportunity for them to do that in this year's draft. Again, EJ
let me
has so
drop
many.
a let me
Go ahead.
drop a
Go ahead.
linebacker name for you. You said I got all the names right.
He
So
does. Yep.
um, so like listen, I haven't talked a lot about this guy because like I wanted to see what he looked like this week, and I think like honestly like. I'll just be completely straight up. Like, you're watching a lot of different positions. I don't have like a final definitive idea on the guy yet, but I think Eagles fans should watch Chad Mumma this weekend. He's a
Mm-hmm.
guy from
Yep.
Wyoming. He's a linebacker. We just talked a lot about linebackers. I figured I'd drop the name in there. He's a guy that I think this level of competition at the Senior Bowl is going to be really telling as to whether what he was doing at Wyoming was a product of playing against lesser players or if it was a product of him being really good. So if you're watching the Senior Bowl this weekend and you see Chad Mumma, he wears 48. I don't remember which team he's on. I'm sorry. I think he's on the. I'm not even gonna guess. He wears
And the teams are
48.
coached by the Lions and the Jets, the coaching staffs of two of the worst records in the league that they're assigned to coach these teams. So Robert Saleh from the Jets, and then Dan Campbell. They've been assigned with coaching up these players, but it doesn't end there. I mean, Nick Sirianni, Howie Roseman, they're literally on the field with these guys. They can interact with them, not necessarily in between drills, but they're that close to be able to interact with them and
Yeah.
have definitely conversations after practice. Even up to now, I'm sure they're meeting with a lot of these prospects. But run that name back one more time, EJ, just so our
You
readers
bought me
know who
enough
to watch out
time.
for.
See, that's good hosting by you. You bought me enough time to find the team. So he's on the national team. His number's 48, Chad Mumma. There's a couple other guys I won't get into him, but definitely keep an eye on him. I think that he could be either like a late first rounder, maybe a second rounder. If he's a second round linebacker, man, I think the Eagles would love to get out of the first round without having to draft a linebacker if a guy like Chad Mumma is available in the next round. So
Yeah, and since you brought up a name, I'll bring up a name, and it's not necessarily a secret because he's been one of the best performers of the week. It seemed like whenever he's talking, he's always got a large crowd around him. But Jermaine Johnson, out of Florida State,
yeah,
man, one of the biggest, or not necessarily one of the biggest, but one of the best drills that I love to watch, EJ. And I know you can pay respect to this because you actually played down there in the trenches and at those
that was
positions.
a
But
while ago, man.
yeah, those that offensive tackle versus D end, straight up O line, D line. who can win. It's body versus body, force versus force. They got to finesse and create some swim moves and do what they can to disrupt the pocket. But those are one-on-one showdowns typically, and they've had those throughout the week. And it seemed like really almost every time Jermaine Johnson has stepped into that battle, he's been the victor in those trenches. So another name to watch out for. Played at Florida State. Doesn't necessarily have a connection with Josh Sweat. I believe they might have briefly overlapped.
Yeah.
But again, we talk about edge rusher. I think I'm going to stick with that leading up to the draft, EJ. I want to talk about wide receiver, but not necessarily through the draft. When it comes to the draft, edge rusher has to be their number one priority. But we'll see what Howie Roseman is thinking. Obviously, they love the mantra of picking the best player available or doing the best available thing when they're on the clock. When
Yeah.
they're on the
No.
clock, though, I want to say edge rusher.
Yeah, I mean Jermaine Johnson, he's had a good week. He's nasty, man. He plays with such a motor. Like he's like honestly, I'm surprised he hasn't gotten into a fight yet. He just plays with such an edge. I'll trade you a name for a name. I like the Penn State kid, Arnold Ebiketie, and I've been practicing that one. He's a uh,
There you go,
he's a
Penn State connection.
Temple transfer to Penn State, and yeah, I
Temple
mean
transfer.
he's like super twitchy, athletic. I mean, Jermaine Johnson's really polished, and I think that's why he looks so good down here for sure. And I think he's got a chance to be a really good player. But I like Ebiketie. I like the upside he's got. And then I mentioned Logan Hall earlier. He's kind of like he's kind of like a tweener. Like I think he could play some defensive line. I think he could play like a 5 tech. I think he can really move around a lot. But I thought he had a really good week too. So I've been watching a lot of the defensive linemen, so I just had to rattle off some more for you there.
No, certainly. We appreciate the names. I hope everyone back home is taking notes off EJ's draft prospects. You can check out, again, his coverage on his author page at the Inquirer's website. But again, I think we're in consensus when it comes to the areas of improvement. My thought, again, EJ, my closing thought on this topic, and as soon as, right after that, we'll wrap up the show. But you have to draft a quarter. I'm sorry, not a quarterback. Excuse me. You have to draft a player who affects the ball. You think about where the ball goes. The ball every single snap goes under center, and unless the team is in the wild catch, which is less than 1% of the time, unless you're one of these offensive mind geniuses, out of the box thinkers, the quarterback always touches the ball. And if you can get a pass rusher, you affect the game directly. So that's my thought process on it. That's my closing thought on it. I think we're in consensus there with the team needing to improve the pass. All
Yeah.
right, before EJ lists off any more names, he's such he's taken really on this role of providing draft coverage. I'm have a serious tone when I say that because he's done a great job all throughout the season providing that. But let's wrap it up, EJ. We're nearly at the end of the week. The third practices tomorrow has been moved indoors because of the weather. But it has been such a productive week, not just for us, but the Eagles and really everyone here in attendance. We talked about the nearly 1,000 personnel, scouts, media in attendance at this week. It's been a productive week. A lot of networking, a lot of scouting, a lot of watching O-line, D-line. But it's almost time to head back up to Philadelphia so you can wrap us on up. And again, thank you for joining me, EJ. It's been very fun.
Yeah, it's about time to wrap. I'm trying to think if I want to just like slip a couple more names, a couple more players to watch. I'll give you two, and then I promise I'm done. Zion Johnson, Boston College offensive lineman. You'll either see him at center or guard. I mean, that's a guy to watch. If Jason Kelsey retires, all of a sudden,
He was the player. I'm sorry, and I know you were
no, go
talking about
ahead.
Jason Kelsey, and people in
Hmm.
Philadelphia love Jason Kelsey.
Yeah.
But he was the player earlier. It was pouring hard, and he was out in the rain after practice, taking some snaps.
Yeah, he's not a center. He played guard and tackle at Boston College, and he's been doing a lot of center this week. I think he wants to show teams he can do it, and like the Eagles are probably thrilled to see that. I mean, if Jason Kelsey retires, all of a sudden center becomes a pretty big need. I mean, maybe you think you can move Isaac Seumalo or Landon Dickerson there, but honestly, I think both those guys are better guards than they are centers.
I can't wait to
Seumalo is not
watch.
really a
I can't wait to
natural.
rewatch the show, EJ, in a few
Yeah,
months and remember these names
maybe
like
I'll hit on a couple of them.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
have
you never
to
know.
during their opening Zoom press conferences. I'm gonna have to plug our Inquire Live because EJ
Yeah.
hit on
Well, that's why I
these
named so
names.
many players. So I mean, if I name 50 of them, I'm bound to be right, right? So yeah, no, I think Zion Johnson's a guy to watch. Dylan Parham is another. I mean, he's
Hmm.
basically like the same exact profile. He's a different player, but he's a center guard kind of hybrid. I'd say Parham compares more to Jason Kelsey. He's undersized, super athletic. He's probably got to put on weight to play in the league. Zion Johnson's huge. I mean, he's one of the biggest guys here. Not tallest, but just like big. So I think he probably is more like a Brandon Brooks type body style. I think both those guys have had good weeks. I think they both look really good. Um, Roger McCreary, cornerback out of Auburn, he's had a good week. I think he's more of a slot, honestly, than an outside guy. But still, I mean, listen, that's up to interpretation. I mean, he's just not the longest guy. I don't know. I don't know what
McQuarrie,
he'll
he's
run.
actually a neo. He's a frat brothers with Jalen Hurts. There's your
Oh
tidbit
yeah,
there. Yeah.
nice. Yeah, Q dogs, nice. So yeah, I thought McCreary had a good week. And then I just would say Channing Tindall and what's the other guy's name? The other Georgia linebacker. I won't I won't. I'm just gonna stop. I'm just gonna listen. If you want more, you're gonna have to read my stuff. I'm sorry. I ran out of time. So but yeah, definitely looking forward to the game. I'll be kicked up on my couch with my dog. I miss my dog, so I'll be sitting there with my dog watching the game, and hopefully a couple of these guys I named have a decent showing so they can make me look right.
No, understandably, AJ. I'm sure you're looking forward to some much deserved time back home in Philadelphia. I heard it's snowing up there. We're talking about the weather down here. There's like a big storm going on across the country right now. I think it's going to snow up there soon, but I think we're
Yeah.
avoiding that here at least. I know we've talked about the weather. One last day of practices, EJ. So let's wrap it up. It's been so much fun. I'm sure the next time we have one of these, it'll be much closer to the draft. We'll see how the players we discussed, and I'm sure we'll have more names at the time, how they might fit on the Eagles, and again, how their stock rises or falls approaching the draft. But take us home, EJ.
Yeah, I just want to, thank everybody for joining us. I want to thank you, Josh, for enduring all of my rattling of names and,
No, it's been
just
fun.
my draft
I love the draft.
enthusiasm. Yeah, I mean, thank you for all your compliments and directing people to my work. Listen, I mean, the draft is like I really do. I enjoy it. I love the inexact nature of it. I love the unpredictability. But yeah, thank you guys for joining us here at Inquire Live. You can continue to follow our coverage on the Inquirer's website. If you go to inquire.com, you can just search for the Eagles content. We're going to have a lot of good stuff coming off of the Senior Bowl. Going to have a lot of good stuff leading into the draft. So make sure to follow along. And again, thank you guys for joining us.
We'll see you next time.